Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Alfred Hitchcock Presents review. Today it is Season 1, Episode 20, And So Died Riabouchinska, starring Claude Rains as John Fabian and Charles Bronson as Lieutenant Kravitz. And this is a great example of what would probably be an average episode, but because of an excellent lead performance from Claude Rains, it is elevated to a very good episode and one worth seeing in my opinion. So we start with Mr. Fabian, our lead character, and we get a scene where we find out he's going to bring his ventriloquist dummy home with him. He's very attached to it. And it almost seems like he's a little too attached, possibly, which sets up the rest of the episode. And soon after that, a man finds someone named Occam murdered. And we spend the rest of the episode finding out if there's a connection or not. So at this point, we're introduced to our other lead character, the lieutenant. And he's questioning the man who found the body, which brings him to a possible connection with Fabian. So the detective questions Fabian, whose wife is also in the room, and it seems to be a pretty normal conversation until the ventriloquist dummy starts talking, almost seemingly for herself. So as this dummy is also talking, it's also obvious that Mrs. Fabian doesn't like the dummy very much. So when Fabian leaves the room, our buddy the lieutenant questions Mrs. Fabian, and she kind of explains her position. She says he really cares for this dummy, almost in an unhealthy way it seems like, and he's also put a lot of money and time and things like that into this, and you could tell she's not happy about it. So then a Mr. Douglas comes in the room, and it's pretty much a given that him and Mrs. Fabian had some kind of connection that was pretty close. And Fabian knew about all this, but it doesn't seem to bother him too much because, as we'll find out, he has his own connection to the dummy. So then we get a brief scene of Fabian and the dummy on stage, which is significant because we learn that at one time he had another dummy, which was a male. So at this point, the lieutenant wants to talk to Fabian again, as he's still suspicious of him, and he walks in on a scene between Fabian and the dummy, which seems a little bit too real and even a little creepy, but it turns out to be sad, as we'll find out later on. And Fabian tries to cover it, saying he was just rehearsing. So the lieutenant questions him, and he finds out, he says, I found out that you based this dummy on a real woman. So it turns out that Fabian hasn't been telling everything. So then we get the backstory on this. It turns out there is a girl who was basically a fan of Fabian's, and she wanted to be Fabian's assistant. So he fell for her after he hired her. But then at some point they basically had a falling out, and she was dismissed, and then shortly after disappeared, and Fabian couldn't find her. So he basically created this dummy basically almost like as a substitute for her. A very sad story, and it does feel a little bit just like kind of exposition, but in this kind of episode, I guess that's kind of the best they could do with this, and Claude Rains' excellent acting makes it work for the most part. So at this point we get more information on this, and I have to say when Fabian describes exactly how he created this dummy step by step, Claude Rains does an absolutely fantastic job in this scene. Another great work from him. But the detective doesn't seem to be as sympathetic, and he actually gets impatient because he's basically not getting the info that he needs to solve the case. So the lieutenant goes, as we go to the next scene, to another man, and he questions him about the case. And he's given this press book by the man, and it basically connects Fabian to our victim, Occam. And at this point, it turns out that Occam and Fabian did perform in the same place. And at this point, we learn from the dummy, who says that she has to tell the truth now that she witnessed what happened. And Fabian basically killed Occam because Occam was going to threaten to take the dummy away from Fabian. I'm not really sure exactly how this was going to happen. This part seemed a little bit vague, but it works in the context of the episode. So we basically find out that that Fabian did kill this man, Occam, and the dummy now says that she has to leave Fabian, which makes perfect sense because now everything's out in the open, so he doesn't need this like as a shield anymore. So basically the dummy does basically kind of die, and that part of Fabian is gone. And it's actually a very sad ending for Fabian, who actually had some major issues here. And this story is one that really could have not worked. The episode does have a lot of exposition, but Claude Rains, very sincere and excellent performance, really makes this whole thing work. And Charles Bronson's fine in support, but this is really Claude Rains' show. So with all this being said, I give In So Died Riabouchinska a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely an episode worth watching for the excellent performance of Claude Rains. So a 3.5 out of 5 for And So Died Riabouchinska, and as always, thank you very much for watching.